Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the MZ Events podcast. I'm your host, Joey, joined by Gilan.
Hello.
Sorry to have a couple weeks off, but Gil and I both took wonderful vacations, and now we're back ready to talk about events again.
Today we are watching Block Wars 1, but not the Block Wars 1 you're thinking of. We're talking about Block Wars Origins 1, basically.
Origins 1, which comes to us all the way from December 2020. We're going to go ahead and start it, and then we can give it a little intro as well. Gil, start the video in 3, 2, 1, go. Because Block Wars has been the event that I'd argue you can see the most change and growth in, looking at just the currently available VODs. Obviously, MCC has also changed a lot since the first to now what will be the 33rd coming up, but it's a case of they didn't have as much growth that they needed to do. Whereas Block Wars, oh boy, you're about to see some incredible changes that got us where we are now. This is Origins 1, if we want to call it that, but it was just called Block Wars at the time. There's only 4 teams, and they're playing on all the games on the server, and it's gonna just be not quite the event experience it is nowadays.
You'll notice that this event is command blocks, all command blocks, no plugins or script or whatever. And the way you can notice that first is when we started the video, if you looked at what was it, Morgan typing, they had to use /trigger to see the layer voice. Like it's the built-in Minecraft command to run stuff. But for our first game, what do we have here, Joe?
Dropper, which is funny that it's a full game, whereas now in the current event, it's now part of a bigger game of Move. It still has the tutorials on the side to kind of explain what it is, ensuring people know what the goal is. But to give us context of where this event is, this is taking place essentially after MCC 12, but before MCC 13, which would be the last one of Season 1. And this is kind of one of the first events that came about inspired by MCC. And why this is relevant is because you're going to hear a little bit of salt from the people when they play. You're going to hear a little bit of anger. It's because they're all competitive and they're playing with their friends. But it's also the case of people hadn't got a chance to play in events like this yet, so they didn't know about the etiquette or the way to play or how you're supposed to do things. So this was their first chance to kind of start figuring it out. And I think you'll notice quickly just how, comparing it to the current events and how they're going on, just the level of I don't know, how much more fun people seem like they're having, instead of how much stress they're under when they play in this one. But obviously Dropper's first game. Dropper's a simple game in some ways, but I think you and I both agree, Gilan, that has difficulty because of essentially the same issues that parkour games have, is that people who are good at it are really good at it.
And you can also see that as a viewer, it's even sometimes worse to watch in parkour because it can be almost dizzying.
Yeah.
And it's just like especially when you have to be zoomed in, because a lot of players do like the zoom in, help aim it. And it's like, there's a reason why Block Wars now has it as a part of a game, right? It's not a full thing. There's only a few. You're not playing it for a long period of time. I think I do remember still testing Block Wars when Dropper was its own game. I remember running over to that thing that teleports you back up. But I remember just hating it because I would make it like halfway through and I'd get stuck on one thing for like about 5 minutes or like a few minutes.
And this level doesn't even kill you, so it looks like, oh, it does kill you at the very end here. Yeah, oh, you have to time your slow fall to essentially get through as quick as possible so you still have it. I was confused for a moment for how that worked.
So you have to search for the
you can find it because it's the gray around the gap, but it does not look fun to do. And splat. So now you just follow the crowd for it. It's a game where like Dropper is fun. It's fun to play on a server. It's fun to play yourself. It's fun to play with friends occasionally, but it just doesn't really work in an event setting where there's a lot more pressure, and it's just a lot. There's such a big skill difference in people who are good at it versus people who are not as strong at it. And dead again.
So I think the issue here is the slow falling is going away when it's not supposed to be.
No, I think it's supposed to go. I think you have to do it fast enough so you have slow falling the whole time. And if you don't make it,
maybe I think,
because
but it's weird because it's happening at some weird times
well, it's
depending
just
on
a
people.
timer on the side. What I'm guessing is rather than like having an area where it just takes it away from you, they're just setting it at the top, which
I mean,
which works, but then it's could have it be a better way if somebody touches the ground, they lose their slow falling, so they don't have to waste another 10-15 seconds before they die. And just barely made it.
Yes, I did it. Yes.
I like playing dropper on a server occasionally, but I also think like you quickly run into a limit of what you can do with the game, because essentially it's just falling down, and the only ways you can have different falls is slow falling or like honey blocks, and that's really all the complexity you can add.
Yeah, there's not a lot. It's kind of a similar thing. The best you can do is just decorate it differently and mess and change where you have to go. And it kind of feels like one of those games that I feel like people rage a lot more than in parkour, because parkour feels a bit more skill based sometimes. I think dropper sometimes, even though arguably it is still skill based, people feel it's more luck. Like, oh, I just barely missed it.
And we skip ahead there. The next one, there's this actually levitation going upwards, but again, it's not really a dropper in that sense.
I believe that we're using cheats here to see past the blindness or something.
I think it's just Lunar being this way, and they're now voting on the games again.
Actually, it is, yeah. Morgan was basically using really wide FOV, so the blindness didn't cover vision, so you can see which area is which, the corner of the vision.
What's gonna be funny is
people already break the game in the first event.
And if we could watch Tommy's POV for this, because he's the one actually like ensuring the game loads to next game every time, and you can see him just typing commands, helping fix stuff mid event, and how all the technical side of it hadn't been polished to the extent yet where it just flows from one to the next to the next. And what's crazy here is we're gonna see battle essentially the same as battle is nowadays, which is you get your kits and then you go kill the other teams. And I think there's benefits to battle as a game. I think we've talked about it before because many other games have kind of this battle royale style, but you do kits rather than looting, so it makes it more balanced and fair. But I think you also need a second level of objective, because it becomes just a very much of a waiting game of trying to push one team toward another team to fight, because it's so hard to make conflict actually happen.
Yeah, it's the same. You want to try to avoid the issue that we complain about in survival games all the time, where people play way too passive because there's not enough of an reward, or really, it's not even a reward. It's making it so you have to get the reward. If you don't, you're going to be left behind. Like, you have to go to this point or else you're just not going to get any points. So you have to take those risks if you want a chance to win.
Yeah.
And pushing people to fight over those.
I think also in this one, the kit balancing wasn't quite the most balanced, so tank ended up being really strong. I think that's pretty obvious looking at it here when it has netherite armor.
Yep.
It sounds good in theory. Oh, it just makes somebody who's the tank who doesn't do a lot of damage. But like a wooden sword that crits does a lot of damage to people who have very little armor. As well, the Turtle Master Potion makes you like nigh unkillable. Nigh unkillable? Nigh un. If 40 seconds of resistance 3 on top of the netherite. I also really dislike that, like, when in game modes like this where everybody's like, we gotta crouch now to be super stealthy, and just everyone's crouched, but so no one can move around quickly. That's why I prefer if they're able, take off the name tags in some way, or they'll only show up when you're closer, and then have it where you can tell your teammates apart by, glowing or something else.
We want to go clean, honestly. Let's go.
And now everybody slowly marched in, because there's no capture point in the middle, there's no capture points at all. It's only kills that are worth anything. The border is going to shrink and push them in, but obviously it takes some time. Even with this Turtle Master Potion, Morgan seems pretty fast, which is kind of ridiculous.
It's like a retro game.
Yeah, it feels like that.
When we reacted to that retro game event where it was just like straight up PvP, it kind of had that same issue where, because there's no objective, people didn't really have a reason to fight, and they kind of just stare at each other for a while.
They kind of stare at each other, run, run, run. Some people don't even swing their sword because they're just running the whole time. Then their teammates try to save them, then they run some more. Like the issue like with this versus like a FPS version of this game is you can always just lay down suppressing fire as you're running away. Like somebody can shoot and do a lot of damage. But if you're running away and your teammate only has a sword, your teammate has to go into them to then help you run away. And so you just keep having the issue of somebody's running, somebody's being attacked, and somebody's dying.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure if you were to watch some of these POVs, like they never even swing their sword. They just run the whole time to try to get away from people and not die.
Throw a pot and then run and then throw a pot
and just keep going because there's just nothing to fight over. Like once there's something to fight over, then you go all in and you're able to like, you're going to use all the stuff you have available to try to, you know, get the kill. But it doesn't work when there's nothing to fight over and you're just kind of making laps around each other. And then this team went full tank mode, which probably makes them, I think, the strongest team. They're about to roll everybody.
Wait, could you duplicate?
You could be, yeah, multiple people could be the same kit.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And you can quickly see Morgan's teammates all got rolled because they were not having that big armor. And now they're just ring around the rosy of the last couple.
Now I feel like if we can switch rounds between if we can switch kits between rounds, everyone's just gonna go tank.
I'm pretty sure that's what happens. We only watched 2 of the 3 rounds for this, but we do switch that. I also think that having that last area to fight in.
Oh, yep. What did I say?
Everyone's now tank. Having that last area to fight in, have like a play where you can just run around in a circle is not great. You always want to make sure that last area to fight in is very open in some way for your game. Even like the fountain in MCC survival games like City 1 is still open because you can hop into it from any side. But yeah, everyone's now a tank because they realize it's broken in comparison to the other kits. I mean, there's a lot we could say, like, oh man, they should have known better, they should have done these things better. This is really the first like derivative event coming from MCC. No one else had done it. There was no one else to look at. Like they were trying to figure out how to do things and make it so it wasn't just MCC 2 or MCC Lite. And so that comes with, you know, taking a lot of risks and trying new things.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that pretty much all these games we're going to watch are pretty much more original games. Like a lot of them, I mean, like a lot of them, you have like the simple dropper things, but they're throwing in these original games. A lot of other events were falling into this trap of just kind of recreating MCC games.
They're recreating MCC games or recreating just like Hypixel games. Like, let's just play Bed Wars or let's play Sky Wars and just play those things for game modes. Whereas I think even from the beginning, Block Wars is like, let's make something new. And we're going to see some game modes like Battle, which are still in today. Dropper, which is still in some format in a sense. But we're also going to see like Construction in its base form was started here. But its newer form nowadays is much different. And then we even have Hunt. All the games are still called the same thing, essentially. Names haven't changed too much.
Yeah. You know, when we were watching the MCC 1, which of course right now we're talking about MCC as like, oh, it's like perfect event that like it's working so well and everyone's trying to be like it. I mean, when we watched MCC 1, there were still issues with it. Like not like major bug issues, but a lot of the games, I mean, you had games like Bingo that were just problematic and original. I think there was SG, so like original SG, and it still had problems.
Skyblockle.
Oh, Skyblockle. Oh god.
Foot race.
With zombies for some reason.
Yeah. Like looking at MCC 1, it was just clear to see like all the polish was there, but the game design hadn't quite caught up to like what could be possible. Whereas here it seems like Block was like, we're gonna focus on game design, but we're not quite there on the polish yet. And I'd say like that's very obvious right here in Hunt, where this map feels very plain, but like the concept feels pretty good of how it's gonna be. And if you think about it, like MCC didn't get Parkour tagged till like event. Oh boy, I don't remember which one it came in at. Somewhere around 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. I know there's a Christmas map. But it's a case of like they're trying this out and it worked, it didn't work, it was okay.
Nice.
But it was still fun for the people, and then it was just figuring out how to polish it to make it a good game.
You can kill the other hunters, don't
And I mean, we even saw Hunt come back in the Pride Block Wars, and people had a good time playing it. And there had been a fair number of changes to make it more playable and more engaging.
Yeah, I mean, right now in the chat, as you were mentioning, like polish and stuff, we could see that Donut got an advancement announced in chat. Like those are like these small little things. I know from my own experience forgetting to turn off advancements in certain worlds and stuff.
It's so funny when that happens, when especially give somebody like everyone iron armor and then everyone gets suit up.
That's why I like take aim here, because every hunter is getting take aim at some point.
But it's still a case like Block Wars has come so far, and like we were not a part of Block Wars or related to it. At this time it was I'm not sure exactly who all was part of it, but it was at least Tommy, Emerald, and Lizard, who were the 3 of the people in charge or working on it. I don't know who else was involved yet, because it doesn't look like Donut was involved if he was a builder at the time, because he wouldn't have built these things.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's currently playing in the event right now on this team, so probably experiencing.
Because it came out of the lads versus vibe rivalry, if you will, that a lot of these guys, all these people were MCC testers, and they're competing over who was better at Minecraft, and so they split into some of us are lads, some of us are vibe, different friend groups essentially. And then this was a way for them to kind of put it to the test in a way that they can control a little more, which might make it make sense then for why people would say Block Wars is like a sweatier MCC at times. If you literally took the testers, who are oftentimes the sweatiest players who played the event, and then they make their own event to play in, they're gonna make it that shows off their skills. Because they want to show off that they're really good, which is not that's not a negative thing in any way. It's just being done for a different audience then.
I mean, it's kind of, it coming from essentially MCC testers makes sense. It's being one of the first other events like MCC. It's like if you test an event like that, eventually you kind of want to make your own, right? Because like one of the limit, a lot of people, made their own events because they weren't able to get an MCC tester at MCC testing, and they wanted to experience that. And then a lot of people, could have just made it because they liked MCC testing, but it was limited, and they want to kind of make their own games and, have their own kind of thing to play.
Oh, I like this right here, where you can stop the hunters essentially by using traps. I didn't know that was a thing. That adds some little fun interactions and give the hiders actually something to, do to try and stay alive. That's not just run away. I also like what they did here of spectating. You can only spectate your teammates, so you couldn't have just flying around the map and find all the hiders. And so there are things they're already doing that show we're aware how to make good games, but it's difficult to get that level of polish. And then we skip ahead from that because I think they do one more round of hunt, or they might only do one. I don't remember what it was. We skip ahead to what you might think is race, but it's actually just parkour. And I'd say it's the kind of parkour in the same vein as MCC's old Parkour Warrior, where there's just stages. Each stage has a couple levels within it. You get a checkpoint after you pass them, and they increase in difficulty as you go.
Yep.
But I think we've talked about parkour numerous times. I'm sure people who are listening could tell us what we're gonna say, which is that you have the difficulty of people who are good at parkour are really good at parkour. People who are not good at parkour are not as good at parkour. And so you quickly struggle to make a game that's purely parkour like this.
Yeah, and like as we said, the best solution we have right now is current Parkour Warrior, where you just have multiple paths. People can pick which one. So the idea is you can get less points, but at least you're having fun and you're actually able to do stuff.
Well, it allows you to still pop off, even if you're like, I can't beat this whole map.
It's like that we're at level 2, and this
is already hard.
The end is already incredibly difficult. I can tell. I have never seen that jump before.
It's a crouch jump, either like from the edge. I don't know which side you have to crouch from to keep your head under it, but yeah, it is not easy. And there's already a lot of people stuck here, and this is level 2, which is ridiculous.
That is.
Oh, you can go all the way down. And still missed it. I didn't know you could stand on that part of the bell.
Yeah.
Which is not then good game design, because people won't know that. And thankfully they can like see each other, so there's some communication going on. But it's still, you can't make the jump every time, which is silly. There's got to be a better way to use that mechanic than this, where you make it so it's still an extremely hard jump and very precise to line up. But yeah, I don't have the audio on, but you listening will be able to hear it. And I guarantee you there's some frustrations going on in the voice call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, you're looking at people who are clearly good at parkour. Like, these aren't people who are bad. This isn't like someone like a content creator who's like a simmer, like it doesn't play, like simmers in MCC that doesn't play much Minecraft, and they're like trying it out. Like, these are all players who play Minecraft, have probably done parkour maps, and they're struggling right now on level 2.
Yeah. And I don't even see the way to do this, and it seems ridiculous. And then there's
I think you have to jump to the bottom part of the bell on the other side too, is the idea. But
how do you not hit your head? I don't see it.
Well, I mean, I've seen people pull it off. I'm sure that you just,
and then you have to get all the way down to the edge.
And you have to go to the angle of the edge. Get down at the angle.
There, jeez. And then this is absurdly easier in comparison.
Yeah.
I can do this first
try.
It's
a balancing problem. But
it's the thing, like, it makes sense. You don't always want like a perfect linear like escalation of difficulty, because then it can kind of feel boring in some ways, or everyone just hits the same like peak point. Like, sometimes it can be good to have like essentially like a harder point, and the next level is easier to have a break of it, so there's variation. The issue with that though is it can't be such a ridiculous difference in skill that once you pass, like, it gatekeeps like 10 people from stopping that, but if you do get past it, then you get past 10 more levels. It could be a case it gatekeeps that level, but then the next like immediate one is free, and the one after that is then difficult again. And Morgan's having the classic, I've died once, let me just send it and keep dying repeatedly.
Yep.
No, I'm so bad.
But it's very reminiscent of Parkour Warrior, obviously, because these people tested the event, so they're like, let's make it very similar. Even this right here is very similar to one of the old Parkour Warrior ones. On like it was like the blue stage, which was probably 7, I think.
Waiting for those ladder glass pane Neos. Oh, I hate those.
I do as well. But yeah, I think the other issue often with, we skip ahead of that parkour because it just ends anticlimactically with somebody finishing, is 10 minutes of doing that, and that's a long time, and I guarantee people were stuck on that level 2 for a long time. And so, as we've said before, parkour is a difficult game to balance around people, so you need like additional layers to it to make it fun for people, fun for everybody. And then we're moving on here. So this is collect, which at one point makes it into party as a micro game essentially, but is in the event as a full game for a bit. And the goal is to grab wool in the middle, put it back on your starting platform, which will get you points, and then go steal from the other teams. You can only hold one wool at a time. It insta breaks with the shears, and then you can hit each other with the knockback sticks.
As a game, this is actually this is a good game. Like, I liked playing this, but I remember playing it in testing when it was a full game like this, and like, it's just too long as a full game. Like, it's one of those things where it gets very tiring because it's a very repetitive game. Like, you get in a situation where you and another team are just trading back and forth. These like the wool blocks, and you can't do it. Just gets very boring very quickly. But as a small like part like as you said, like part of party, like a little mini game.
I call it micro games.
Yeah, like there you go, like a micro game. It works really well if you're just doing it for a couple minutes, and especially the way I'm pretty sure this doesn't have the thing where you got points at different intervals.
No, it's just at the end.
Now. Yeah, with collect now, basically every like minute, everyone counts up their eggs and gets points. So it means that like if you halfway through the game have a bunch of them, it's not like at the end everyone can steal from you and the person at the end who has them all wins. You actually have kind of this fair balance where you can win, you get points over time during the game at certain intervals, so you don't have this just constant like issue of right at the end you get all your stuff taken from you.
Like get Mario Karted essentially.
Yeah.
I think my issue with this game, like I agree that it probably is fun, but the issue is you can also target people in it, target specific teams. I mean, you have to go again. You're gonna have to fight the people next to you, and when there's only 4 teams, it's not as big of a deal. But when it went up to 8 teams and you know somebody's in the lead, then everyone can just go for them and sure they get no points. Yeah. And so you don't really want games like that where targeting is possible, because it can just allow for people to not. It allows for essentially metagaming, where people are only playing to win the event and not playing the game for itself.
And so the main worry with that is that if this is kind of a thing that doesn't really work in a voting event, but if you have a game where targeting is possible, you put it earlier in the event if possible. Whether that's maybe making it that, you know, like the way that doing almost the opposite of MCC where games arrive later, so you're like kind of forced to pick stuff earlier, like maybe you have like different batches or just not having a voting system or whatever way you want, making it so if you do have a game that's like this, trying to put it earlier where you don't know what team exactly is going to be in the lead. Like people haven't gotten to the point that they're doing the math to figure it out, right?
Because there are games where targeting is always going to be possible. Like any PvP game where everyone's fighting at once, targeting is always possible.
Battle, which we recently watched.
Which just watch. But like, if the team's in first, they're probably a decent PvP team. So you're like, I can't really target the team who has the best PvPers. Like you can't really do that. Instead,
but the issue here is that, of course, this is not really. If you just have a bunch of people attacking them at once, there's not much they can do because it's just kind of a game of how much pressure can you put on a team.
How many bodies can you send at them? And so it's a case of you don't want games where targeting is possible because it can just lead to unfun things happening. As well, this is a game where knockback is really essential, and Minecraft knockback is very silly. And you can see Morgan even talking there when purple and lime target orange rather than aqua. Because aqua has the most wool currently, because they're targeting the team that's been doing the best. And so why wouldn't you do that? I also think orange didn't do a good job putting their wool all the way in the back to make it harder to reach. And then somebody saying 3 teams again playing about targeting. How did 3 different teams all say that? It's just a case of
the 4th one is targeting them all.
That's well, it's a case of when you see a bunch of bodies running at one team, then you just join the flood, so you can all and you all end up getting then a point. And it's just a case of how the game design is. I think there are ways you could remake. You can make it a round system where people fight each other. You can make it where it's easier to get to other islands with some kind of like teleporter or just longer route to go around to get to the other team.
What is this?
It's race, Gilan. We know what race is. But there's a reason Collect got moved to party and then got essentially removed from party.
Well, that is the mean part of race right there. Over. Oh my god, they have multiple of them.
And punching is possible.
And I'm guessing this is just like foot race exists. We're gonna make foot race.
Well, Ace Race would have already existed right now in MCC, so they would have known.
But when this was made, I have no clue what they would have been basing off of.
But it would obviously be difficult to make an Ace Race in comparison to a foot race where you just have to put down.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have speed pads or jump pads or actually stuff that race has now. Basically,
it's literally just it's more of just parkour movement. And I think the punching actually takes away from this. People kind of stopped doing it because I think they got tired. They got annoyed already. But it seemed like the punching takes away when you're trying to make one of those
jumping
jumps.
into an animal's mouth is a bit on the nose. That's a bit. They're kind of copied.
Bit on this. It was an ender dragon though. It wasn't a snake.
It was a snake. Very different. Oh, that is funny though. Yeah, I do actually like that it's going in a bit more of a parkour direction. It's kind of interesting. Even though like it seems like the punching kind of ruins that, but it is the kind of thing where it's not just, it acts different than something like Ace Race or even Foot Race, where it's not just like you're trying to do like racing lines. You actually have to go through these like obstacles. And that is kind of interesting.
It is, because then there's the doing this parkour under pressure, which is obviously very difficult, and not just who can press space and jump and time their jumps to just get, you know, maximum distance and speed. There's a lot more skill expression being used to make sure you hit all these jumps. And there's like the mini shortcuts. They're not very big shortcuts, but there are those to allow.
Ooh.
Well, we didn't see that in chat. No one saw anything. But that's when you have punching in something like this, I mean, you're gonna get frustrated. Even if you punch somebody off, you don't see like you see them fall, but like you still have to keep racing. So you don't necessarily care that much that you were able to punch someone off when then you like mess up what you had to do. And so it's a thing where, yeah, it feels terrible to get punched, and then it doesn't feel that satisfying when you do punch someone else. So it makes sense of why they removed it and then made it where you can't even see other people when you're racing, when you're close to them. Look at that shortcut. Just doors.
Yeah, but they're on different. You have to line it up correctly, so
which is not difficult in the slightest.
It's very difficult. I had to slow down to line it up. It's losing time.
And the other thing,
you actually like the ladder shortcut here. That's cool.
I like it. This is the issue with punching is you get a little toxic. Not toxic. You start targeting this person who's right next to you, and they start targeting you, and you just both get
neither of you actually are doing the racing part of the game.
Now you're just fighting, playing sumo while you're on a race course. And so it's a case of when you're thinking about your racing game, because everyone has one in their event. If there's any kind of racing, like what do you want players? How do you want players to be good at it? You want them to be good at it just because they can do parkour, or because they can do the race lines, or they can find shortcuts, or do you want them to be good because they can like punch people and then avoid being punched? Do you want them to be good because they're really good at parkour? Like figuring out why they're good at it and why they'll come first will then help you make decisions about if punching should be allowed and whatnot. And then we move on to Spleef.
Oh geez, with the 4 walls.
I find these walls so funny because people always gravitate toward their team wall, but you don't have to you don't have to do that.
Except for some reason Aqua and Green just decided to switch here.
Yeah, and then look at that chat message saying go for blue. Targeting already started.
Push blue. Push blue towards line.
Spleef is a game that's obviously still in Block Wars. It's different nowadays with 3 rounds, one of them being TNT, and adding some
snow.
Isn't technically snow, and having some other mechanics within it to make it more interesting. But it's a game that also that's Block Wars is looking at, you know, this would probably be the game that if we were like, let's get rid of a game, move it to party or move it elsewhere, or just get rid of it, Spleef would probably be the first to go.
It's a simplistic game that's been around. I feel like it's been around forever. Like it is the Minecraft game. It was the game created for Minecraft, basically. Well, kind of.
It was essentially the first created Minecraft minigame. And
because it's actually one of those games that you could essentially play in like survival. Like you could set up with a bunch of people, just place a bunch of blocks and play around.
You could do it. Like a diamond shovel would do it pretty fast, and it was fine back then. But the point being that like we've kind of seen every iteration or variation of what could happen in Spleef, like every kind of epic finale or every fight to get to that moment of who dies, who lives, which team wins. And so once you've kind of run out of all possible like storylines for the game, all the possible iterations, it's not necessarily then as fun to play when you're like, oh, it's another one of these happened or this happened again.
And then the other issue with it is you get to a point where, I mean, when we watched I think it was Minecraft, one of the Minecraft M's, they had like the version of Spleef where it kind of changed each round what type of Spleef it was. Like it had a bunch of different versions of Spleef, but it kind of resulted in this thing where it felt more like a more party game, not as in like a Block Wars party game, but more like there wasn't like a skill aspect to it.
Yeah.
There was kind of this feeling where it's just like constantly switching, and it's almost like a
it's
Mario
just
Party type
RNG
situation.
then.
Yeah.
Because while RNG can be fun in an event to add, you know, some randomness to it, people still want to feel like if they're good at the game, then they will perform well. And obviously, it's not going to happen every time because there's pressure, there's the fact you're streaming, there's teammates, there's people you're going against who are better or worse than you are. But if it's just every time it feels completely random, it's not going to feel fun to play that game repeatedly. Because when you place poorly, you're going to just blame it on the randomness. And then even when you place well, you're going to be like, well, why don't I place well every time? And it's because it's a random game. I think we watched just one round of this. I don't remember how many rounds they do. As well this was before Block Wars even had a finale game, and they didn't necessarily do points the same way of calculating the points up from the whole event. So instead, they just determined the winner by which team won the most games that were played of the 8 games. Which I think is actually a fun way to do points as well, Gilan. The issue with it though is you can't really have a comeback. But I think if you did it in the way like what Twitch Rivals used to do, where like winning team would get, for each game, winning team would get this many points, second place this many, third place this many, fourth place this many. It allows for comebacks in later ones because the first place finish still gets a lot versus the bottom place finish. But when you do only the winners of games, well, it could get decided by game. I think the earliest it could get decided by is game 5. If one team wins 5 straight games, or it could also be decided in game 6 if one team has won 4 and then 2 teams have won 1.
Yep.
I think. If I did my math right. I might have done my math poorly. Don't fact check me.
I was also going to mention for Spleef specifically, there's no decay right now. I don't think there is.
There's not.
And that's kind of a thing that's really necessary to make sure we don't have this situation where you have people on the bottom who are just kind of like aiming upward. Like the glowing helps, but
the map is also so big, and what somebody could have done is just make that essentially an island to stand on and be like, I'm in a corner so far from you, you cannot reach me.
And like what's funny is if there was someone still on that top layer and everyone else is on the bottom, they're actually unreachable.
Yep.
Or you could probably get a snowball up there, but it would be incredibly difficult.
It'd be hard once you if you're able to tier your teammates, so one person stays at the top, makes an island, person below makes an island like around that one, or it cuts off the area at least, and the person below also does the same. That top person can't die. And then you just send everyone else to get rid of the rest of the teams. It is funny to see all the names of people who played in this, how long ago it is now, and that they're still playing in Block Wars to this day. It's Finished Daniel, Pixel Craftian, Pink P, Donut now works on it, Marcus does MC. Like there's so many that have just stayed around and been part of this, been part of help making Block Wars what it is by being a participant or staff or just a fan as well.
That's good. No clue.
And then the game after Spleef is, I forget what they actually called this game, but you'll see in a moment. I think it's called Puzzles.
Like a trivia technique.
In each group there's 4 items. One of them doesn't belong. Which is it?
Okay, so
and you just press the lever, which is an interesting concept. And I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know the answers to this. I don't know what they decided on. Because
you just flick each lever?
I probably could. I think it just lights up below you if it's correct. So presumably you could have just tried each one. The thing I've always, this is the issue with like knowledge-based Minecraft minigames. They work great as like puzzle games, like elsewhere, like a separate game itself.
Yeah, like a Minecraft map.
Works great, but in an event, your brain is trying to go fast, first of all, so it's struggling. And it is not good at thinking like laterally about the things. So essentially, like, you're trying to be like, what is different about these things? Let me think of all the ways it's different.
Easiest one. Come on, guys.
And it's
one of them literally poisons you when you eat it. Come on.
But that could also be wrong, because it doesn't have to be that way either. And so it's really hard to make things like this that are actually not necessarily fair is the right word, but to make them fun and not just feel very frustrating during an event. There was the, what was it? The Xbox Game Pass event, or whichever it was, that started with like essentially a Pokemon rock pushing ice puzzle. And one team got through like 5 minutes, other team took like 30 minutes, and it was rough to watch. And it's a case of like, yeah, it should be easy, but in this situation where you are stressing when you're trying to go fast to beat the other teams, it is very difficult. And it doesn't lend itself well to a team game when only one person can do it faster than 5 people, especially in this case.
Yeah, I have no clue.
And so, how do you see like knowledge?
The teams don't really understand what they're supposed to do either. There's kind of a situation like, wait, what are the levers on the wall over there? Like, are we supposed to flip those? What's going on?
There's the problem that there's two-step, essentially. It's two-step authentication to see if they got it right.
So it's two up there in their block wars door.
So essentially you have to hit the 2 things that are not part of it, not part of the group. Or is it one? Maybe it's just one.
I think it's gonna be this one.
And then you have to hit the lever at the end to see if it's accurate. And I think it only tells you if you got them all right. But it also is annoying because you don't know. You could easily get confused about which way is up or down for the levers. And it just gets really difficult really quickly. I also wonder which of the staff are the one to put this in. I presume it'd be Emerald, since I don't think they're playing in this one. Whereas I know Tommy and Liz both are on teams. And it would have been kind of obvious if they had put it in and been like, it's this one, this one, this one, this one. I think what like the kind of knowledge-based puzzle that works that we've seen in an event is MCC Sands of Time, like puzzle rooms. Sometimes they don't do great when they pick a British word and no one's British in the event. Shout out to MCC Rising long ago. But
what word was that?
I don't remember what word it was now. If you go check.
Was it bottle water?
It was just a word that was not common. First group has one item that isn't in the miscellaneous creative tab. No one knows that, Emerald. No one knows that. Which yeah, that first one was the sword. Or is that not even group 1? Which one's group 1? I can't tell which group is which. That's group 3. Group 1's, wow, I don't like how they numbered this either. That confuses my brain. 1 is on the right side of the room at the front. But like, how do you see knowledge-based puzzles like this like playing into an event?
Well, I think, as I said, I feel like they just don't work in an event setting. Like, I feel like they're meant for, as I said, like single-player maps or separate things. Because like the idea is that it's more of like a journey that you go, like it could be part of like the idea is there shouldn't be a race to do it. Like you shouldn't be racing to solve a knowledge-based thing like that. Like unless you're designing a game around like the entire event around trivia. But like it's not it's like if you have a Minecraft trivia event, that's a separate thing, right? Like that's the whole purpose of the event. But throwing it into an event full of like skill-based things instead of knowledge-based things kind of makes it feel really weird.
It was not the spider eye, by the way.
Oh, because I saw there was the round flesh up there, so
it was the golden apple. Which the issue is there's so many different ways you could think about what is the thing that's out of place here. Like they keep turning away, so I can't look at one in particular, but there's so many different things like this is different because of this reason, or this is different because of this reason, and then you're just going to get trapped in this loop of overthinking it. And they did get it there, and now they're on to another puzzle-esque thing.
That was level 1.
That was level 1 indeed. And so now they have to do something. But the main issue with these kinds of things is it's just not fun for 5 people to do. Like, this is something that you could do by yourself rather than needing a team of 5, and so it can get really frustrating to then try to do it with 5 people.
Yeah, like it kind of reminds me of doing like an escape room with like 8 people. Like I've done an escape room with way too many people before, and you just had this situation, and some of them were children. So it was just like this situation where like you have 3 people who know what they're doing, and then like a bunch of other people who are just kind of picking up things and moving them around, which is not helpful.
Oh, this is gonna be the classic kind of puzzle where the button activates some lights, turns off other lights, and turns just you have to figure out the combination of them.
It reminds me of the puzzle that was in like the Hypixel lobby for a while, where you like click the lamps and it does it in like a T pattern, and then you have to like figure out the order to do it where it enables all the lamps but doesn't disable the rest of them.
What's crazy is I can tell you how to do this so easily. Is you just click each button so that it tells you then no. They're just hitting all the buttons really fast to hoping to get lucky. You hit each button, you write down real quick which numbers it does to turn on, and then you math it out real quick. Not even math, you essentially count just which ones then need to be on, which ones need to be off.
Well, I guess the issue is that if you press another button and then hit the button, it's additive, so you can't really tell. But I guess yeah, you can
tell which one turn on and which ones turn off, because I assume they turn on and like they do either.
Yeah,
they just flip the switch.
The ones that are on and off, and then off the ones that are on.
Yeah, so they just flip it. But I think they've done the issue here of they press too quickly and now it's out of correct sync.
Well, I think there's a reset button over there.
There is, but they're not hitting it. But again, this is a thing you do not need 5 people to do. And so having 5 people here just makes it more.
You can see like everyone else is just going AFK. Well,
yeah. That should like go back. Yep. It's not that one. And then none of them are going to light up this one because they messed it up. Oh, there you go. So then it has to be a different one.
No.
See, this is kind of a trial and error. I don't really know what to call what they're doing on this. Feels like just pushing buttons until they find a success. But yeah, no one else is doing anything other than Morgan, which is great that we picked Morgan's perspective.
I memorized it.
Now they have everyone but that one.
Fully intended.
It's just not gonna happen though.
That's not any of the patterns.
It's just not gonna happen. And so like knowledge-based games are fun to play. They're fun in puzzle games, they're good, but they don't work in an event setting because they are just so stressful when you're under a time crunch. And then how do you ensure that like everybody on the team is also participating? Because it's not fun to stand here and watch somebody else do it. And the thing that your brain's going to resort to when you're struggling is a brute force method like this.
Just a pattern that we have to...
And so it just is then going to continue to be frustrating. And I'm sure I can't hear the comms. I'm sure the comms are sounding very happy right now.
We want to leave...
That was a little sarcastic.
Wait, if I do that and then...
But also just like, again, I realize that at this point of Blockers, it's not really a viewer event. Like, it's not meant for viewers to watch. But like, if you're trying to make something that has a bunch of people watching it, nobody wants to watch this either.
Yes.
Go through them.
Wait, click that blue one again.
For sure, this is not the most riveting concept, but it's funny to see that like. I mean, this is what would happen if you put anyone in this event, told them to do this. Like, we can all pretend we're like, here's the easy solution. We know to do this. But when this is like your 6th game and you've been playing high action, fast paced games the whole time, you're not gonna be like, let me pull out the pencil and paper and write this down. You're just not gonna do it.
Oh.
Oh, dang it, he was really close. You got to, do that. And then go.
I think it's like there, but I have not been paying close enough attention to know which one does which.
Okay.
And then Liz is just jumping at the door.
Wait.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Should have edited out more of this too. I probably will edit it down when we watch back. This is just pain. And then the game ended because someone else got out, which thank the Lord. But the game they go to after that, skipping ahead, is Crypt. But not in the way you're thinking of Crypt that came later. This Crypt is more like meant to play like a 2D like platformer. And you're just trying to go find the blocks that for each of the wall in the like platforming. Not the maze. I don't know what word to... It's not really a maze, but it's kind of a maze. You'll see in a moment. But later Crypt would end up being more like Sands of Time, or where there's more exploring, fighting mobs. This is more a case of just like movement and trying to find the right things.
Yeah, I've seen other games that have kind of that 2D. One of my favorite is actually I think it was like a Twitch Rivals that was kind of was it like space themed? It was like a very space themed Twitch Rivals. And there was a game where they basically had a 2D platformer style game. And
red and yellow?
The way it actually worked is that you were in F5 and you were invisible and you were kind of replaced with like a 2D sprite. And then you actually basically were parkouring sideways. So they were like these smaller jumps, so you could do it without like sprinting. And it was actually kind of an interesting concept for a game. And it had that similar thing where you're trying to collect stuff and bring it back.
Yeah.
Red and lime?
So somehow they have to go collect the orange blocks for their team. I don't know how we'll be able to tell it's the orange blocks they're supposed to collect. Or they should turn on the levers that didn't do something else.
Okay, cool.
I'm a little confused still on how this game works because it seems confusing.
Blue and brown?
And essentially you're just trying to navigate.
I don't really understand what the doors are for, but
just to slow people down. I think it's to make it so you just can't see immediately where you've been and like what's ahead of you. I don't know why sometimes it seems like they're very slow to open. But my guess is that's meant to make it so you can't tell as easily where you've been. But I also, looking at this I think is the first game where I'm like, the map design really takes away from it.
Did you guys get the diamond block?
Obviously, there wasn't their goal to have the best looking maps, and in comparison to current blockers, obviously they're come a long way. But this one feels really weird because you can see, first of all, the green flat world next to it, which feels really odd. And second of all, it feels like more could have been done to kind of spice up the movement a little bit, or know where to go, or any of these kinds of things. Because it kind of just feels very repetitive of go through thing, fall down, go up. And they could have added, you know, just slight decorations or slight bits of parkour to add a little more complexity to what's going on.
yeah, because it's one of the things, the kind of walls right here, like right now it just seems like you run to one of these like wool walls and you just kind of sit here, and it feels like agonizingly slow.
Yes, so yeah, they have to essentially complete the monument by finding one of each, or they win by only, they just need one. That was one of 4 they need. If they just get the metal ones, they win. I don't know. I'm a little confused on how this game goes.
Yeah, I think you just have to be the fastest to get the blocks. I think as a game concept, the idea of like going through some sort of maze style thing, collecting stuff and bringing it back, it's kind of that. I mean, it's kind of like the Sands of Time type situation where you're going out into this area you don't really understand and finding it. The limits right now is, as you said, the map design. Like this game would be much more interesting with. It could still have this kind of 2D aesthetic, but it could be changed to be a bit more interesting.
It also needs like an additional thing to the game to make it more interesting. I saw something great talking about game design recently, which it talked about the idea of like a proto game. Like you have a game that could be fun and it works and it's like functional and you have like the rules for it, but it's like missing another element to make it into an actual game. Like it's just a proto game still. And this feels like a very much a proto game where there's missing some kind of element to make into a full game.
Yeah, it's kind of like that situation with you talk about like story, like the idea like you can't have really a good story without conflict, and it's kind of the same in games too. You can't really have a good game if there's no conflict or there's nothing in the way stopping players from just going from point A to point B, because it feels like this game right now is like you're just going from point A to point B. You're searching around, you're finding something, and there's nothing like stopping you or forcing you to do it faster. Because like for something like Sands of Time, which I mean it's kind of called Crypt, so we're just going to compare it in this situation. It's the similar idea of searching for, you know, keys and unlocking stuff in this situation is kind of similar. Sands of Time, number one, you have that like the mini game of trying to collect sand to keep the timer going. You know, you have that stress of the time that kind of pushes you to do stuff faster and be riskier. And then on top of that, you have the parkour and mobs, which act as like something to get through. And it's not, and it'd be interesting because I think without the timer, it wouldn't be the same game for Sands of Time. It would just be like, oh yeah, there's this conflict in the way. But by having that, those small conflicts plus this overall conflict, it results in the game being much more interesting, a bit more stressful, and more strategy for how you tackle it. Because this is the kind of game where this one right now, in Crypt, this example of Crypt, you can kind of just go everywhere and search everywhere for stuff, and you're just kind of racing against other people. But there's nothing like really forcing you at the moment to decide, oh, I'm not going to go over there, I don't have time for that, you know, I'm not going to go over here, that's too risky.
It's really just getting lucky if you went to the lever path first versus where the block is. And then as you're saying, for what makes Sands of Time good, it allows for high and low moments throughout the game. Like you're having the peak of you're having a high moment when you find the vault key, and then a higher moment when you unlock that vault door, and then there's a low moment where you might die in the dungeon, or you drop coins in a lava, or you miss something. Like it allows for both low moments and high moments to happen, whereas this is mainly just it's kind of static of what's going on. It's either you find where the lever is and then you get the block, or you are just running. And as well, this is about to wrap up, and the whole point of this, as always, we're not bashing on Block Wars, especially not Block Wars 1, which is, you know, now that as I am a part owner of it and help work on it all the time, I'm there, like, this is where we came from. It's more to show like, here's where you can like watch something